Hi, I'm your host, Prateek Panda, and you're listening to Impulse, the influencer marketing podcast by Phyllo. Here, we talk to the best and brightest in influencer marketing to help answer all your questions, from finding the right influencers to making sure you have the best influencer marketing strategy. So let's get started. Welcome everybody to another episode of Impulse, the influencer marketing podcast. Joining us today is Marisa Blackwell, an adventurous marketing specialist with an impressive background and over a decade of experience in the digital and mobile user acquisition space. Marisa currently serves as the influencer marketing director at Vibrant Performance, a dynamic affiliate partnership agency, which is part of the Aragon Company, an award-winning performance marketing group. But before we get into the conversation today, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button on your preferred podcast platform if you haven't done so already. That's the best way for you to not miss out on any latest episodes. Welcome to the show, Marisa. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Yeah, it's awesome being here, and thanks for having me.
Great. So first things first, give me one controversial hot take about influencer marketing.
I guess I would say that you can achieve your performance goals easier than you might think with creators, and you can reach a much older demographic than you probably think on platforms like TikTok, which have a reputation for being only for very young people.
Okay, that is very interesting because, like you said, right, the popular opinion and what I know as well, I'm not a TikTok expert, but what I know is that it's a platform that attracts a lot of younger audience. You say that it works for an older audience as well. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think there's been campaigns like that I've heard about, not that we've necessarily worked on, but like AARP I know has seen a lot of success with older demos on TikTok, just as one example, but also because we work with our current clients are all targeting like 35 plus, and they're seeing success as well.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's talk a little bit more about TikTok, right? And, TikTok has been in the limelight for all the controversy and whether it would get banned in the US or not and so on. But
yeah,
why do you think TikTok is so popular? What makes it different?
I mean, the audience definitely, and I think the culture that they've started to build. I mean, when you look at other platforms like Snapchat, Meta, like Instagram, like they all have a very unique Pinterest. You can go on and on. Twitter, or X rather, they all have a very unique kind of culture and community, and like there's social rules and norms that they've developed. So I think that TikTok has just developed this very unique one, and it's super engaged, and people are just, and it's very fun and lighthearted. And I think people need that and want that. They want that entertainment, and it's it's fast, and I feel like that is a very, very valuable opportunity for brands to be a part of.
Got it. And one thing that I've noticed also, and there's like a lot of content about this already, is the difference in the algorithm that TikTok has versus, let's say, an Instagram or Snapchat. And one of the key things is that it rewards good content irrespective of your follower count, right? And
Yes.
you could leverage that to create more successful campaigns even with smaller creators, right? So as a brand, is that what you should leverage TikTok for? Is it made to sort of leverage smaller creators?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that. That's what's so special about TikTok. Yeah, you don't have to necessarily like spend thousands and thousands of dollars just because somebody has this many numbers of audience, and not to mention there's all, the issue of like fake followers and all that stuff. So with TikTok, you can work with micro influencers, nano influencers, like all the different, tiers based on your budget. And there's a lot of different ways to compensate those creators and those partnerships that you do have with those people. But yeah, to your point, like at the end of the day, just comes down to having like a really solid video that speaks to the audience you want to reach.
Got it. And you did mention a little bit about, engagement and then fake followers and things like that. So how do you identify who the right influencers are on TikTok, particularly if you're a brand and you're, new to influencer marketing, you're exploring creators on TikTok? How do you identify who the right influencers are?
Yeah. So, I think Sorry, we're kind of like really going off script here, but yeah, I think there's a lot of there's a few different ways. I mean, we like to reach out to creators on a like a direct basis. Sometimes we do use you can certainly use third party tools like Fiverr, um, or some of the other third party tools that are like built on that, like have networks and things like that. But you can also just, if you don't have an agency or you don't have a network, you can just reach out via email or DM them if you can get them to follow you back. And yeah, just start a conversation. Just be like, hey, like we saw this post, we saw that post, we really like what you're doing. We'd love to partner with you. And so yeah, there's a lot of options, I think, in the creator economy.
Got it. A lot of marketers that I talk to have been a little bit conservative, especially from big brands, have been a little conservative if their audience is not younger audience, right? Because the general perception is that, okay, TikTok is great for younger audiences. So we did talk a little bit about how it has worked for, older audiences as well. Is there some formula for that? Like, should all brands just believe in that, or is there a way to really test the waters and figure it out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we've done a few different things. You can do, I mean, I think a lot of our clients are very performance focused. And so the advertisers that we work with, are looking for certain KPIs to target usually. Whereas, some brands are a little bit more open and are looking more for like brand awareness. I think ideally, regardless of who you are and what your goals are, you kind of want to do a little bit of both, maybe different ratios, of the different tactics. But it's good to, do a little bit of the organic, a little bit of, some maybe paid media. We do a lot of the paid media approach using user generated content and just running things as ads, and just seeing what works. And you can use that data to kind of educate the rest of your strategy. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways. I don't know if that answered your question totally.
Yeah, that's good. And, talking about goals, I think it's a good point that you brought up, because going back to your take about the hot controversy, you did mention that it is easier to achieve performance with influencer marketing, much easier than what people expect, maybe, right? Can you talk a little bit more about that? And because, like influencer marketing, I think is still relatively new as a channel compared to, let's say, performance marketing, right? And it's not, I would say, a true replacement for performance marketing, but definitely getting to a point where, you can drive better ROI. And in the past, most brands used influencer marketing more as a branding initiative, more for visibility. And now more and more marketers are trying to measure ROI out of it as well, right? So talking about that, right? Like, what's your take on that? Why do you think that, it's getting easier to achieve performance with influencer marketing?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the different, I guess there's a few different things. There's strategies with regards to like running paid media, which is a lot of what we do. But there's also, if we're just looking across all of influencer marketing as an industry, I mean, there's also more and more of the affiliate models popping up as well. So, if you are a startup or just a brand that is like limited with budget, you can find ways to work with more of the nano micro, creators that will, depending on what product, what brand we're talking about, you could just give them, free product and to post organically. You can pay them commissions on an affiliate basis. You can do a blend. You can do like flat fee plus affiliate. And yeah, and then what we see a lot of success with is we'll work with a little bit of both. So like we do pay flat fees to our creators, but it's much smaller. We work with more micro influencers, and then we tend to run those on paid ads on TikTok just to see what works and just get that data. But yeah, there's a lot of options.
So a key point there is that you tend to use micro influencers as content creators. So it's more of a influencer generated content, which then you put some marketing dollars behind it to promote using paid channels, right?
Exactly.
Got it. There's this thing about authenticity in influencer marketing, right? There's a reason why it's working. It's because, people trust the influencers that they follow, and the influencers also tend to, try to be as authentic as possible, at least the good ones, right? They tend to be as authentic as possible. So talking about authenticity, as a brand, how do you find that balance where you want it to be authentic as well, but you know
Yeah.
you're still spending money, you want to drive ROI out of it, you want to get conversions out of it? How do you find that balance?
Yeah, so it doesn't sound too, well, you probably hear this a lot, but at the end of the day, like authenticity and relevance are really key. But yeah, the balance is tricky because of course, you want to convey the brand message as well. And if we work with banks, for example, or people who have banking partners and have compliance guidelines and things like that. So that's obviously a little tricky. You're a little bit limited, but you can still find ways to work with a creator and have them maybe come up with their own script. And then you run that by legal or, whatever you need to go through. But wherever possible, I think it's really important to have that creator to really collaborate with them. And just maybe you can give them some ideas like, look, our brand is looking for this, this, and this. They want to mention, certain things for sure. But then but what ideas do you have? Like, what can we talk about? What resonates with your audience? So for example, if they're posting, if you're doing something like Spark ads, which is like essentially boosting an organic post, which we've done and seen some success with, you kind of want to wear both hats, don't you? You want to wear like the organic kind of like strategy, but then you also need to think performance wise, like what's going to work. But at the same time, you want to lean into your creator and kind of let them tell you, like they know their audience better than anyone. So it's marrying that with the goals of the brands, like what message do we want to convey about that brand, and what's going to work with this creator, and where does that middle ground meet, and a lot of that is just collaborating with your partner.
Got it. Makes sense. I think, it's essential to try and find a partner, but, more often than not, when I talk to smaller brands who are just testing this out,
Yeah.
they tend to try things out in-house first, right, till they get to a particular spend or they've experimented and think that, okay, now it's time to scale up. Now, the
Right.
reason I'm bringing this up is, I've done performance marketing for more than 10 years, still relatively early as far as influencer marketing is concerned, but even I'm getting there with new experiments every now and then. One thing with performance marketing used to be that it was made for certain kind of products and certain kind of people. When I say certain kind of people, I mean, you need to have some amount of budget. Like if you show up with $500, it's not going to get you anywhere, right? So
Right.
the general perception, at least in today's date, is find at least 5K or 10K to spend on performance ad, and then you
Mm-hmm.
start slowly scaling it up and report ROI and so on. Do you think
Yeah.
there is something like that for influencer marketing as well? Because I've reached out to influencers who've quoted like a wide variety of price points, depending on their engagement, followers, and so on, right? Like
Yes.
I've reached out to influencers who've said $300 for a TikTok post, the same,
Yeah.
the similar kind of campaign. And I've reached out to influencers who've said 15,000 for a TikTok post, right? So
Yeah.
where do you go? How do you experiment as a brand that's starting out?
Yeah. I think there's a few ways. I mean, we start with when we're working with brands, we try to approach them with a few different options. And one thing you can do is when you're working with maybe lower to mid-level creators, you definitely don't, want to put, pardon the cliche, like all your eggs in one basket. Like I would not recommend, even though it's tempting to look at those those like celebrities or like big, influencers who are charging $5,000, or like you said, like I've actually gotten a quote for $30,000 for one post, believe it or not. And I was just like, wowzers. um, so yeah, so that's certainly, you want to be kind of strategic about, you want to get variety, as much variety of different kinds of, hitting all the different, think about all the different niches and micro audiences that might speak to your brand or that you're targeting. what are those audiences? Who are those personas?
So Marisa, you talked a little bit about ROI and the performance part of influencer marketing, right? How do
Yep.
you measure success and ROI for an influencer marketing campaign? I mean, obviously there's the obvious ones, like if you're an e-commerce brand, for example, you could track conversions and purchases and so on. But is there something
Yeah.
else to ROI that you should look at?
Yeah, so I think obviously it depends on a lot on the brand and the product's kind of goals. If we've worked in, for example, with some gaming apps, and they have anything mobile gaming usually has like very specific like KPI targets they need to hit. But yeah, across the board, you just need ideally some kind of a tracking platform. We have worked with people who just use Google Analytics, and that can get you by. Even better is if you have some, like a proper MMP that's going to actually attribute, your marketing efforts correctly, hopefully. So you're not doing any guesswork. So like so for example, how that plays out into certain tactics is like if you're having a creator or an influencer post an organic post, they will, take that tracking link that you can generate, and, you have certain parameters that help you to separate things out, and they can put that in their bio. You can even put it in comments. Try to be savvy about it. But then we do a lot of paid media. So you can certainly, input that tracking link into your paid media and make sure that everything is, pixels are set up correctly. TikTok has, pretty great tools, actually, resources that allow you to share pixels between accounts, things like that. So, there's ways to track those pixel events or app events in a way that downstream, that you're getting for each different campaign, for each ad, you can tie it back and make sure that you're getting that downstream result that you're looking for, whatever that might be.
All right, that's very helpful because in the past I've worked with a variety of different influencers, and in a couple of occasions they've not been okay to use a tracking URL because
really?
their suggestion was that it kind of makes it look as if this is the intent is so they rather want to do a really very organic style post, and then you try to map it. And it's been hard, right? Like I've done that a few times just because I really wanted to work with that influencer, but the tracking part used to get really hard. One occasion it was still relatively easier because we weren't really running any other active campaign at that point, but that's rare, right? Like you're running influencer campaigns also, you're running email campaigns also, you're running paid ads also. A lot of stuff is happening at the same time, and a lot of times you don't know, somebody watches a TikTok video and then they open up a tab on their browser to look up the company, right? So it's essentially direct traffic, but now you're not able to attribute it to this video, right? Or the effort that you put on your influencer marketing channel. Have you seen that, for some of your customers?
I have not seen that yet. Were they, just out of curiosity, was the influencer, they didn't want to mention like link in bio at all? Like they didn't?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean I personally have never worked with anyone like that. Like most of them have understood that the brand wants to track performance in some way. And, if anything, the people that we work with are kind of hopefully aligned on that goal. I guess this also comes back to kind of like compensation, doesn't it? Because it depends on, and goals, right? Like, so if the goal is to raise brand awareness, then do you even need any kind of a tracking link? Like maybe not. I mean, if you just want those vanity metrics of just how many views, how much engagement, you don't really need the the URL.
Yeah.
So I think that's okay. And if that's your goal, and you can look at organic lift, that's very hard to do. Like you said, if you've got a lot of traffic sources running at the same time, but you can still you could try to steady out your other media sources and then do that big organic post, hopefully big, maybe small. And maybe you see a little, increase in your organics. That can certainly work too. But yeah, for our advertisers rather, generally we like to use the tracking links.
Got it. Makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about scalability, right? This entire process sounds cumbersome. You're working with a lot of humans.
Yes.
which are difficult to deal with, right? There's
So far
contracts that have,
humans.
so far humans. Actually, we're starting to see a lot of AI
Hmm.
influencers coming in now. Of course,
Yes.
behind them are humans.
Yeah.
So
True.
at the end of the day, you're still dealing with a human, and that can
Yes,
be
yes.
difficult, right? So, when we've been comparing influencer marketing as a channel compared to performance marketing, for example, right? It's very easy to scale up performance marketing ads. Whether it is going to be
Hmm.
effective or not is a different conversation, but it's
Right.
very easy to scale it up.
Yep.
How easy is it to scale up influencer marketing, right? How do you go from the first 3 to 5 influencers to maybe working with whatever, 30, 40, 50 at a time?
Yeah, so there's a few ways to do that. If you're doing it on an affiliate channel, like, if you're working through a network, or you have some kind of affiliate program, and you're, depending on the scale or, your reach of influencers, potentially that can be pretty big. It depends also on time frame. So if your expectation is like, you want to scale in a week, I mean, back when I worked in mobile games, before this even, we used to like do burst campaigns on a weekend, for example. I don't know how many people do that now. I think with influencer marketing, it's much more like scale is a little bit of a longer play, right? Like you have to generally, if you want to see the results of not just scalability, you want to give yourself due time to get there. So I would say like 1 to 3 months, maybe. But if you're just running paid ads, in theory, you could start scaling. If you've brought on a handful of influencers that are all like, yeah, let's do Spark ads together, or let's do these UGC ads, then you're scaling pretty quickly. You can scale like in a matter of days. So it depends on how you want to go about it, but there's definitely options.
Got it. Makes sense. Do you have any sort of specific examples of TikTok campaigns that you've done in the past that you can share and talk about? Like something that you learned in the
Yeah.
process, what was good, not good?
Yeah, we've worked with some like a mobile gaming app, Discovery app. There's a few of those out there, and they're a great partner. And we saw some really high engagement, like I think it was like 300% or something engagement rate, from some organic tactics that we tried. But also we saw like really solid CPIs, like $5 CPIs, actually CPMs as low as that. So, you can definitely get the performance that you're looking for.
Okay, that sounds good. Any, best practices for measuring success of campaigns on TikTok? Any do's and don'ts? If somebody's listening to this podcast and
Yeah.
they're new and going to try out TikTok as a channel, do you have any tips and advice?
Yeah, I think definitely expectation setting is important. Give yourself the time when you're looking at like, yeah, goals and content. I think try not to run ads. They always say for TikTok, like don't make ads, make TikToks. Make it just seem like you're just, if it's just an influencer talking to their friend, like make, something organic like that just feels very real. Like you don't want it ideally to feel too much like I'm selling something to you. Like you definitely want to get, and if you can, and if you can make it really entertaining, even better. And that comes down to who you work with and finding the right influencers.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, right? End of the day, if you're really starting out, actually, irrespective whether you're starting out or not, you want to try and make the content creation process as authentic as possible for yourself as well as the creator,
Exactly.
because that's what's going to work for the audience. At the end of the day, that's what you want, right? So
Right.
I think that's great advice. So fun question to sort of wrap this up. If you could take out one influencer for lunch or dinner, who would that person be and why?
Oh, wow. That's a curveball. Um, I might need to like think about that one.
Sure. I mean,
Only because
take,
we don't work with that many of the bigger influencers, unless we're talking celebrities.
I
So
mean,
maybe
yeah,
Elon.
sure.
I was gonna say Elon
That's a good
Musk.
one. Yeah. He's always top on my list also.
He's a very interesting person.
Yeah. All right. So interesting answer with Elon, right? And, of course, he's a, very, very interesting person. And there are a lot of people who are huge fans. I'm also a big fan with conditions applied, but, like why Elon? Why would you want to meet him?
Just because he's made some good and maybe bad moves. I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, or does. But first of all, I like Grimes, so I'm curious about that. But also, of course, everything he's accomplished or working towards, I find interesting. I think X, there were some fumbles there, and I'm not sure where that's going to go. But I've got a whole list of questions just about, if he wants to colonize Mars, that's probably a big one. Yeah, any SpaceX stuff, I would like to know more.
Yeah, this weekend we were on a road trip, and we've been talking a lot about colonization of Mars and if that's going to really happen and how things would work out. And if you do get to meet Elon,
would you go to Mars?
I don't know. I am very inquisitive. I would love to go to get a sense. I don't know if I can afford to go to Mars though. So, if people need, individuals as an experiment, maybe I would sign up. I'm not sure.
And that's the thing too. I'm like, can you make it? I'd be like, Elon, can you make it so that everyone could go to Mars? Not everyone, but maybe just make it affordable, like Uber. That would be interesting.
Yeah. So interesting. And if you do get to meet him, I will follow up with you to know more about these.
And I don't know how many decades we'd have to wait for the price to get to that low point. But maybe one day.
I do have a feeling though that, this is just random guesstimate here, but I do have a feeling that within the next 10 to 20 years, at least we would start having some activity on Mars, meaning somebody would land onto Mars. Whether we would actually get to living there anytime soon, I don't know. But it will be interesting to see. All right, Marisa, thank you so much. This whole conversation was great. A lot of interesting, nuggets of information. I'm sure the listeners would find it helpful. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And I'm looking forward to catching up with you again sometime soon.
Yeah, likewise. That'd be awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Thank you, Marisa.
Impulse, the influencer marketing podcast, is brought to you by Phyllo. Phyllo is the easiest way to get access to authenticated creator data from hundreds of different platforms. To know more about Phyllo, visit getphyllo.com. That's getphyllo.com. Also, make sure to search for Influencer Marketing Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcast listening platforms. And don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Phyllo, thank you so much for listening.